The annual Global Development Awards competition grants 2 awards to recognise excellence in policy-oriented research and innovative social development projects. The Japanese Award for Outstanding Research and Development supports the research capacity development of researchers in low and middle-income countries. And the Japanese Award for Most Innovative Development Project funds social development projects benefiting marginalised groups in developing countries. Run by the Global Development Network since 2000, roughly $4 million has been granted to researchers and social initiatives around the world. The Global Development Awards competition recently celebrated its 20th year, and the impact of these 20 years is demonstrated in the competition's independent impact reports. The grants have a positive impact on research skills, career advancement, and follow-up funding. And the majority of research papers from grantees have been recognised nationally or internationally for their quality. The grants help to increase professional network collaborations and tend to exceed the expectations of organisations and individuals and enable skill development. The professional growth of the grantees increases visibility and recognition among research, policymaking and NGO circles, as well as stimulating further projects, publications and funding. The awards offer a platform for participants, both researchers and NGOs, to increase their networks and project recognition to national and international audiences, and the winners often see national and international replication of their research or development projects.
Welcome everyone to the finals of the Global Development Awards competition 2023 on the theme of the Nexus of Education, Development and Human Security as part and specifically to the finals for the Outstanding Research on Development Awards. My name is Francesco Bino. I'm Director of the Research and Programs Unit at the Global Development Network, and I welcome all of you, and I'll be your moderator for the session today. So we're going to start with a brief presentation on this program, which happens to be the longest standing program of the Global Development Network since its foundation. Let me just share my screen and we'll go through a few slides for those who are not familiar yet with the program. This program, the Global Development Awards competition, started in the year 2000, right? And I was saying is the actual oldest running program of GDN. It has been, I would like to acknowledge actually the funding over 2 decades, for over 2 decades of the government of Japan and the Ministry of Finance in particular, and of course the invaluable support of the PHLD Trust Fund at the World Bank. Over 20 years. Over 20 years of this program, we've funded over 4 million in research and implementation projects. This is one of the unique aspects of this program. It's a competitive program, both for research grants and for implementation grants, targeting teams and development professionals from across low and middle income countries. Today, we will be hearing the presentations of the finalists for the Outstanding Research and Development competition, which is the research component of this program. Tomorrow, actually, we'll have the finals for the implementation component of this program. So today, we'll be looking at 3 research projects led by 3 researchers originating from different countries that qualify as a low middle income country, and we'll be competing for prizes for a total of $60,000, with the first prize winners receiving a grant of $30,000, the second prize winner winning a grant of $20,000, and the third prize winner of $10,000 for implementing a research project over 12 months. One of the one of the new entries in this program, an innovation we introduced recently, is in fact a grant that will allow the researchers to collaborate with the implementers. This is the core of you know, what we think, or why we think this program is important. So there'll be the possibility to access actually a follow-up grant to work more closely with researchers. For researchers to work more closely with implementers as they implement their own grant and try to scale it up. Now, in line with really the DNA of GDN, this is more than just a granting program. Our mandate is, of course, to strengthen research capacities across developing countries to produce high quality and policy relevant research. And our work is as much about research as it is about capacity building. So we really invest a lot in the process of research, not just in distributing funding. And this explains a little bit our approach to this specific program, because beyond the selection, we organize a series of activities. And what you see on the screen now is really how we got here, right? So we organize webinars for prospective applicants, trainings in communication for the finalists who will present, so they are best placed to present and pitch the project and compete for the first prize. Of course, we put our grantees in touch with other grantees, past grantees from this program, growing a network that spans over 100 projects as of today. We are now at the finals. After a process that lasted over a few months, we had around 400 people who applied, of which 40 people who applied. So we had 40 different projects that we received in response to the call. 25 from 16 different countries were actually considered eligible. We're very proud of the fact that half of these were actually led by female researchers. The stats on this aspect were not as good a few years ago, and the kind of the simple changes we made to the call proves that you know, reaching a good gender balance is within reach of you know, of any such program. After the eligibility check that helps us kind of identify the complete and well-built projects, we go through two different levels of reviews. This is also something quite unique for this program. A first level of review involves a panel of young and mid-career researchers. So researchers that, of course, qualified on topic, but they have up to 10 years of experience as academics. They do a first screening and a long listing of the projects. And then the long list goes to a second panel of senior researchers. So researchers who have expertise in the topic of the call for the specific year, and who have more than 10 years of experience in research. And these are the ones who have the responsibility to identify the 3 finalists that we'll hear from today. The 3 finalists before the finals, of course, as I mentioned earlier, they have access to a training in communications. So, you know, they spend around a week in a training where they get feedback from research communications specialists on how to present the project, how to develop a pitch for a project, and of course, how to develop also a slide deck and a leaflet on the project. Quick announcement for those of you who are connecting because you're interested in the competition overall, and not just in the finals. The new edition, the 2024 edition, of course, of this competition has been launched, and we'll have, you'll see on the screen the date and the time for 2 info sessions, 4 info sessions that are coming up to find out a little bit more. Or otherwise, of course, please connect to our website to find out more. Now, the 2023 edition focuses on the nexus between education, development, and human security. So we're looking at projects that kind of dig into this nexus, of course, with policy relevant questions, and that propose either, also innovative approaches and methodologies to research these topics. So we have, of course, we had in the call a few guiding questions that researchers could follow, but we really expected researchers to come up with their own original questions on this topic. And today the finalists will present in front of a jury, an international jury. And I'm going to present the members of the jury. So yeah, we have the honor of having with us Dr. Yoichi Mine, who's a professor both in Japan at Doshisha University and at Stellenbosch University in South Africa, and is of course the executive director of the JICA Ogata Sadako Research Institute for Peace and Development in Tokyo. And I'd like to thank, in fact, Dr. Mine and all of the JICA Ogata Research Institute for the support throughout the years to this competition and for the presence on this jury year after year. We really appreciate this. We also have on the panel Dr. Izumi Ono, who's Professor Emeritus at the National Graduate Institute of Policy Studies, GRIPS, in Japan, and also, of course, a Senior Research Advisor and former Executive Director of the JICA Ogata Sadako Research Institute, who supported us over the years as well. We have with us the third member of the jury is Professor Jean-Louis Arcon, the President of GDN. And we also have Selim Rahman, who's a professor of economics at the University of Dhaka in Bangladesh, and the executive director of SANEM, the South Asian Network on Economic Modeling. Is also, we're very proud also to count him among our board members of the Global Development Network. This jury has already had access to the full proposals and has been evaluating these proposals against this 6 evaluation criteria. So we're looking at the contribution the research can make to develop a debate and practice, the innovative potential of the research in terms of the angle it takes, and also the methodological choices. So kind of questions we're asking here and how we expect to answer it. We're looking, of course, at the academic quality of the proposal, the clarity and significance of the policy implications, and of course we're looking at more practical aspects like the feasibility and the realism of the proposed projects given the budget and the timeline. A final criteria is actually the quality of the presentation, and this is why we really invest in training, in giving training to researchers so that everybody has a chance to upskill the presentation just before the finals. Without further ado, let me actually just list the finalists for this year's Global Development Awards competition for the Outstanding Research and Development category. We have 3. We have Jovia Nakato from Uganda, from Makerere University. We have Cyrine Saab from Lebanon, from the Center for Lebanese Studies. And we have Victor Owusu from Ghana and University of Education in Winneba. This is it in terms of a presentation. I would like now to give the floor to Dr. Mine to deliver some welcome remarks. Thank you, Dr. Mine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Francesco. And do you hear me? Maybe yes.
Yes, we do hear you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Yoichi Mine. I'm Executive Director of JICA Ogata Sadako Research Institute. I'm very much honored to participate in this competition as the chair of the jury. So let me share a few words with you. First, I'd like to extend my sincere appreciation to the organizers of this Global Development Awards competition. So GDN has always been leading the trend of the times, and the theme for this 2023 award is Nexus of Education, Development, and human security. Okay, so human security is an agenda that seeks to strengthen people's power to choose by grounding security practices in lived realities of people. So this is an agenda of protecting the life, livelihood, and dignity of each and every person from multiple risks, such as armed conflict, forced migration, and climate change-induced disasters, pandemics, and economic crisis. On the other hand, education protects and empowers vulnerable populations, including children and youth. Education is a critically important foundation of human security. In the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, we know the slogan, leaving no one behind, which resonates with the principle of human security. So in the field of education, we also have goal 4, which is ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Okay, so in times of compounded crisis, there arises an urgent need to guarantee people's right to education. So however, development aid should not be a one-sided charity. So there is an absolute need for vulnerable people to have confidence in their potential and for external actors to respect their local agency. So we should listen to people's voices at the grassroots level and build policy frameworks from the bottom up. Now, I understand that this year's finalists have prepared excellent proposals which approach human security issues related to education. So this year's theme of the award is worth discussing not only with senior scholars, but also with relatively young researchers. As such, this competition is a very good opportunity for all of us. Okay, so with 20 years of continuous implementation and engagement, this Japanese award for outstanding research on development has proven to be successful in promoting high-quality research on development issues. So many of the winners in the past made significant achievements and contributions to the GDN's mission using the prize budget and the GDN's mentorship effectively. So I'm very, very proud of these achievements. Okay, finally, on behalf of the Japanese Ministry of Finance, which is the sponsor of this award, I'd like to thank all applicants, especially the finalists. I'd also like to thank distinguished members of the selection committees for your commitment and dedication. Okay, now it's time to move out to the competition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sabina. And of course, we are extremely proud of this partnership with Japan and different, of course, institutions in Japan, but of course the government, the Ministry of Finance, and of course the support, steady support of the JICA Ogata Sadako Research Institute over the years. Once again. Now let's move to the actual finals. So this is how the rest of the session will be organized. We'll have a presentation that the finalists will present one after the other. We'll have 15 for each researcher. We'll have 15 minutes of presentation, and then we'll open the floor for questions, of course, from the jury, but also for those of you who are connecting today from home or from your offices. Please use the Q&A box. We won't be able to give the floor to people connected online, but we really invite you very warmly to use the Q&A box that you find at the bottom of your screen to ask your questions to the researchers as they present the work, and I'll pick up those questions and ask them to the researchers during the Q&A. I think all is clear, so I suggest we start the first project and the first finalist. So I'd like to invite Jovia Nakato to join us and to give to present the project, her project, which looks at street children in Kampala, and that is titled "In Between Marginality and Social Constructed Urban Survival: Assessing the Potential of Local-Centric Models for Education, Health, and Welfare of Street Children in Kampala." So, Jovia, thank you very much. You have 15 minutes for the presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Francisco. Let me share my slides.
As you navigate through the streets of Lebanon,
Perfect. We see your screen, so please feel free to go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much. My name is Jovia Nakato, and I'm very excited to be here among one of the participants. Growing up in one of Kampala suburbs, it is really inevitable for one not to encounter street children roaming around the city streets. And to any of us who have been around Kampala city, you cannot fail to identify a child or two living and surviving on the streets of Kampala. However, as you get closer to these children, what you see may look like desperateness, but there is an array of hope in the eyes of these children. With an issue that has been normalized, mainly the street children problem, we say, no, what can we do about this problem? To any of us here, I want you to imagine a situation whereby you are once a street child. It is a situation that is imaginary. How would life have turned out for any of us if that is the kind of life we had to go through, or that is how we had to grow? Life on Kampala streets is not as easy as we expect. Without access to education, without access to basic health services, the only thing in the minds of these children is to grow up and become adults. But without the basics as they are growing up, how do we presume the kind of adults they're going to become? By us researching in between marginality and socially constructed urban survival, we aim at creating opportunities to empower street children through increased access to affordable and inclusive health and education coupled with welfare enrichment services. I'm going to be presenting today, but we worked on this project with my other colleagues.
fail to identify a child or sciences.
I'm really sorry. I think I have an issue with my slides, but
You can see the second slide.
let me first stop sharing, because for me, I cannot see them moving.
Yes, no problem. Just reshare. Yeah, stop sharing and reshare again, and probably will solve the issue.
Indeed, when coffee
Or if you prefer, we also have a copy of your slides. So if you want us to, we can share them, and you
I
tell
think
us
that
when
is
to move.
fine.
Would you like us to share the slides?
Let me share them from here. You can help me share, because I don't know what's happening to my screen.
Great. João, can you please pull up the Jovia's PPT? There's a slight technical issue on her side.
Okay, it is here. I'm sorry for the inconveniences. So, like as I had said, we intend to create opportunities to empower these street children. It is a problem that has been persistent for a lot of time, but empowering them through increased access to affordable and inclusive health and education, coupled with welfare enrichment services. So one of the people at the UN said there is no issue more unifying, more urgent, or more universal than the welfare of our children. Let's not forget that these children lodging around the streets or living on the city streets will be the adults tomorrow? What kind of future are we preparing them to? As we proceed through this presentation, let's all imagine a society where all our children can be able to access basic services, including education, health, and welfare regarding of their backgrounds. How did we get here today? We see that about 1,500 children are living on the streets of Kampala. However, how did we come to those numbers? In the early 2000s, Kampala had something like 2,000 street children. But as we talk in 2023, the numbers have increased to about 1,500 children. Majority of these children have been born onto the streets from street parents, some because Uganda hosts one of the largest refugee communities. Most of these children are born of refugee parents, so they're just the in between. They're non-citizens, but they're, however, living on the streets of Kampala. Other children are running away from their families because of a number of issues, including domestic violence, among others. However, we see that the government of Uganda is not seated. At least 100 children are taken off the street every month. But as you see the trend on the right side, despite them being taken off, the numbers continue to rise gradually. So as these children live on the streets, it is not an easy task or an easy job for them to survive. They're faced with different levels of marginality. For example, for the boys, majority have been termed to be thieves. For the girls, it is very hard to survive here because most have been gotten to indulge into activities, including sexual exploitation, as they have to sell their bodies to get survival. Other challenges faced here include abuse, violence, lack of access to services, because most of these children do not have guardians leading them into the right path. So we see that the government of Uganda has tried a lot of strategies or has put a lot of strategies in place to ensure that this problem is minimized. To go back to our problem, we see that even if we try to take out the street children, taking off 100 every month, it will need to take us 12.5 years to get all the children out of Kampala. So as the government, it put up the Kampala Child Protection Ordinance of 2022. However, unlike other countries, for Uganda, this policy criminalizes these children that are loitering on the city streets. And to a person who tries to help out a street child, for example, you're giving them money, you're giving them accommodation, you're subject to a fine of around 40,000 or even a jail time. The government criminalizes and prohibits sexual exploitation of these children. But when you look at the ordinance, it does not fully explain how this is to be done, how the perpetrators who are exploiting these children are going to be held accountable. Still, the government in Article 34 says that no child shall be deprived of basic treatment or education, be it health services. Every child has to get these services. But when you look at the way the projects are being implemented, most of the children, including the vulnerable street children, have been left behind. Still, the government, one of the solutions we're having in place are rehabilitation centers. However, when you look at these rehabilitation centers, yes, they're built around helping these children gain basic literacy, counseling services, and psychosocial support. Majority of these have been resource constrained. We see, for example, Kampilingisa, one of the rehabilitation centers, it has a capacity of only 70 children. So if we say we're taking off 100 every month, where are we going to be taking them to? That is still a challenge that is still very existing. We see that NGOs in Uganda have really tried their best to ensure that these street children get a normal life like other children through providing sexual services. But them being minors, still the government is against such activities. For example, providing sexual reproductive services like condoms, among other things, to protect them. And in a country like Uganda, where HIV prevalence levels are still very high, it is very inevitable for us not to think that these children are exposed to all those kinds of challenges as they continue to grow. In the in the rehabilitation centers, the situations are normal to the street situations. So most of those children tend to come back so that they can look for basic ways to survival. What are we going to be doing? For our research, we're going to generate evidence on the dynamics, patterns, and processes emanating from the street children problem in Uganda. We say that yes, street children problem has been studied in different research. The media is trying to cover it up, but this is a scenario that has been normalized and most of the people are not giving it ears, given that there is no evidence putting street children out there for them to be like the key respondents for their research to highlight their problems. We also intend to offer opportunities for mobilizing informal actors into our network for effective action, interventions, and policies targeting street children. It is this kind of network that will help us leverage on the policies or on the local specific models that will necessitate to improve the well-being of these street children. We also intend to examine local specific models that have been socially constructed to necessitate education and healthcare improvement and well-being. This will be done by evaluating insights from successful local-centric models to derive the specific pathways that could be leveraged to inform the policy. Some of the models in place include in situ community schools, music, sports, among others. Our research question would be, how can we leverage these local sensitive models upon to necessitate inclusive, accessible, and affordable education, health, and welfare of the street children in Kampala? It will be guided by 3 objectives. First, we'll assess the situational context of street children in Kampala. This will include a profiling of the social, cultural, economic dynamics of these street children. We'll also evaluate the effectiveness of the locally constructed models in street children management in the Acholi Quarters neighborhood, and further we'll mobilize and create and strengthen connections for knowledge action and policy among the key stakeholders that deal with the street children. Our study area will be Kampala City. Kampala has about 60% of its population residing in informal settlements. Residing in informal settlements is characterized with different characteristics, including the high levels of poverty situated here, the poor sanitation, inaccessibility to basic services, and the migration issue being one of the key contributors to people in the city. We see that about 30,000 people living here have ever migrated. And we assume this is one of the reasons that the street children problem is still persistent in a country like Uganda. However, the study will narrow down to a case study survey and will use Acholi Quarters. Why Acholi Quarters? Despite the fact that it contributes to the highest number of street children, it also has some models, local-centric models that have been put in place. So it is like a perfect place to navigate the specific models that could be, the specific models that can be relevant in addressing the street children problem. This is an area that is mainly an internally displaced camp in the past. However, as time has transitioned, it is tending towards becoming an informal settlement. The area, like other informal settlements in Uganda, it is experienced with high levels of poverty, and most of the children here tend to go out to look for money to support their guardians, among others, leading to the street children problem that is increasing. The methodology we'll employ will work with mixed methods, that is quantitative and qualitative. And these include key informant interviews, focus group discussions, the surveys will be mainly 2 kinds of surveys, that is the case study surveys and contextual surveys. To get experiences from other street children, we'll employ a life history kind of analysis. The main unique thing about our methodology is we're going to employ a grassroots approach. We're working with Aliguma Foundation, an established NGO. They have experience working with children, especially in Acholi Quarters and in other informal settlements. These are people we have partnered with as the Department of Geography on numerous projects, including plastic pollution in this area. The partnership will be guided by a memorandum of understanding. We'll also employ a participatory approach where different stakeholders will be brought on board. For example, the civil society organizations, the local government, community organizations, among others. What is our impact? We mainly intend at empowering informed decision-making. Yes, we're going to generate evidence on the street children problem, and this will come through including blogs, articles from those kinds of outputs. We aim at increasing awareness among the street children. Most of these models have been in place for a long time, but these children do not know when, how, and what they need to access these basic services. We intend to leverage on existing policies to promote enhanced service delivery, and we aim to influence public opinion and mindset change, drawing lessons from successful local models, and also strengthening stakeholder collaboration. How will our project contribute to the project theme? In education, the project will highlight local education models that work in promoting literacy among street children. Will also guide existing health interventions to bolster health promotion initiatives for street children. And the project will inform future sustainable rehabilitation and reintegration efforts for street children. The research team is led by me, Ms. Jovia Nakato, and the other research team, Ms. Cyrine Nakayenga, Baino Mugisha Benade, and Mr. Bernard Musamba. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Jovia, for this presentation, for sticking, of course, to the allotted time. I'd like to open the floor for questions from the jury first, and in the meanwhile, we'll be monitoring the Q&A box. So again, an invitation to everybody who's connecting to this session today to use the Q&A box to ask your questions to Jovia and her team. Of course, you know, it's important to acknowledge there's a larger team usually behind this project, even if the principal investigator is leading the presentation and the work. So who would like to start? I'm looking at our jury members. Okay, Selim, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Jovia. I think it was a very interesting presentation and a very interesting topic indeed, and your proposal. And thank you very much for that. I have one small question, just for clarification. Your second objective was that to evaluate the effectiveness of existing locally constructed models for street children management in certain neighborhood. So my question to you is that, you know, I saw your methodology slide and in the proposal too. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what kind of techniques you will be using to evaluate that kind of effectiveness? Thank you.
I don't know if I respond one after the other, but I'm going to respond by saying most of these models have been put in place. For example, some have been documented and some have not been documented. They've been working for a number of time. However, we intend to examine the effectiveness using, we will first use the community-based organization we're working with, because it has worked in that area and it knows which one is most effective and which one is not effective. We'll also draw from the experience of the life history analysis of the street children who have benefited from these models. We're not trying to put new models in place, or let's call them interventions, but these are the interventions that have been in place for quite long. That means using the life history analysis, we get to understand what has worked for those children and what has not worked for them. And since we're putting out a community-based organization that has worked in those areas for a long time, it will also help us evaluate for the time they've worked there, what has worked better and what has not worked in regards to helping street children get reintegrated back into their communities or adopt into the communities where they are in.
Thank you very much. Ono-san, please, you have the floor.
Francisco, you need to be a bit louder.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I gave you my mic. Ono-san, please.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a very important research, I think, because the street children issue and also actually region has a very much in the northern area has a very much historically kind of challenging places. So you try to tackle with this internally displaced people. This is a really important, I think, research. I have two questions. First question is, you talked about you will look into the locally centric models of those intervention. Do you have any idea, hypothesis about pattern, types of those locally centered kind of models? Because it may be too many, you know, that you may not be able to cover all types, but if you have some idea of the types of locally centric model of this that the support, that would be appreciated. The second question is, I think you try to combine various methodology, like a context assessment surveys for more than 300 the people, and case studies, 100 people, and then focus group discussion, life stories. Yeah. So these are very much impressive things. But do you have any idea how to sequence these researches? Because this may be a bit kind of ambitious and also time constraints. So how do you organize? Do you plan to kind of arrange these the various the surveys?
Okay, I'll respond to the first question of the examples of local-centric models in place. For the case of Kampala, there is, for health, there is like immunization and other health programs. We have music and sports. And also for the NGO we're working with, it is into mainly football and sports, engaging children through that. There is immunization, sexual reproductive services that are provided by community members. However, since this has not been clearly documented, we intend to get other models as we navigate the field. When we go to the field, we'll get to know those in place that have not been clearly documented. But for those documented in situ community schools, immunization, music and sports, among others. And still on the second question where you talk about the various methodologies, yes, we accept that we have contextual surveys, case study surveys, but as the research team, we think this is all relevant to get to the complex issue of the street children. When you look at the street children problem, it is something that is dynamic, but it's still interlinked. So as for going one methodology for the other may compromise the kind of results we're going to get. And in that is why we intended to put that NGO in place to ease in the work, and still the Department of Geography will employ the graduate students, if that is the best word to say, to help us see that we stick to the timeline of that specific, or to stick to the timeline while employing all those methodologies in place. So us having many methodologies may not compromise the timeline, but it will, however, help us to get what we want and also minimize on the interlinkedness or the complexities of the street children problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Jean-Louis.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. I just had a question. So you have a very nicely developed data gathering section in your, this is a follow-up in some sense on the previous questions. A little bit more information on any links that you're going to do between the quant survey, the 325 kids in the quant survey, and so what you're going to put in the questionnaires there, and whether you're going to try to link that to the life stories, because that could be something really, really interesting if you can sort of combine the qualitative stuff with the quant stuff, and whether you've given any thought to that. Thank you.
I don't know if that is like a question or an idea, but to just add on, we intend to do contextual surveys of around 375 children. That is for children between the ages of 7 and 17. But then for the life history analysis or the life history surveys, we intend to look at the children who are once on the streets. They may be now adults, but they had that lived experience onto the streets, how they navigated, how they overcame the challenges. and how they benefited from those strategies. That is the main aim of the life history analysis. However, for the case study surveys, the numbers will be generated after we do the preparatory phase for us to get to understand how many children will do in the case of the case study surveys from the 375. So that will depend on the numbers of the children that are available. As I indicated earlier, for the case study area, it is an area where NGOs have worked, so it has those locally grounded interventions already in place. So we're using it as a lab to get to see what is in place and what can work for other children in Kampala.
Great, Dr. Mina.
I have a very, very quick question. Do you belong to the Department of Geography? So,
Yes.
Is there some specific contribution of the discipline geography to your research?
To this particular research?
Yes.
What the Department of Geography will contribute?
No, the geography as academic discipline.
Like, it is some kind of complex question, but I'm going to make it simple. When we look at geography, it looks at like the study of the environment, but in contemporary geography, it goes ahead to understand the urbanities. That is for the case of urban geography. And if you to look at the urbanities or what is surrounding us, we cannot forego the issues or the challenges that we face today. And one of those issues that are grounded is the street children challenge. They're part of our environment. They survive on our natural resources. So that comes into the broader context of geography. And that is why we go to the ground with this project.
Okay, there's a few questions also in the Q&A. Of course, there's a request for somebody who's very interested, in fact, in your project and wants to understand whether you think the kind of research you're going to do in Kampala is applicable and will be relevant also to secondary cities where the phenomenon of street children is actually rampant. So this is a question by Richard. Otherwise, Juliet asked a couple of questions in terms of very practical things, working with, of course, subject at risk like street children. So how are you going to choose the children? How do you plan to include or exclude the children? Also a question of the sustainability of the project. Do you see this as a one-off project or kind of a longer-term endeavor? What happens after the end of the project?
I'll start with the one who asked about the secondary cities.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at the locally grounded models for Kampala, it is still the Ugandan situation. So from our point of understanding, we assume that if one model works for another, it is not going to only be limited to Kampala city, because you see other cities like Mbale, among others, have the street children problem. So by us generating evidence on what works better for the street children in Kampala, the other cities can also draw from those evidences to get them implemented into the secondary cities. This can even go up to the not even national level, but international level, because we're doing an evidence-based kind of research to get to understand what is on ground and what will work best. So how will we choose the children? This is the reason we're bringing a local NGO in place, because for us as people from the Department of Geography or as graduate students, we may not know who is a street child and who is not a street child. But this NGO we're working with, that is Aliguma Foundation, it has worked in this area for a very long time. So it will help us map out the street children. It will help us navigate, and we will use its links with other NGOs still in Kampala to get to map out the street children. Our exclusion criteria, we're not going to include children from 0 to 6 years, because we tend to look at it as they may not be able to explain very well what is going on well, because they're literally like babies. but children from around 13 years. Other researchers have also proposed those children to be with a higher intellectual ability to get to understand what we want. That is like our exclusion criteria. Because for the ones 0 to 6, they may be like babies, something like that. And for the longer term, I didn't get the last question.
Yes, the sustainability of the project. I mean, is this kind of a long-term partnership with the local NGO, or you know, how do you see this evolving if you successfully implement this? What's next?
Okay, after we successfully implement this, the project is not going to stop there like any other research where you just do research, publish, and end there. We intend to venture into engaging into multi-stakeholder dialogues. This will not only be limited to the people at the Department of Geography, but we intend to bring different stakeholders in board, including the local government, the media, among others. Because of this evidence that has been generated, it can be elevated to a higher level whereby the local government could say, we are adopting this because we have evidence of the street children problem. When you look at Uganda, the numbers are not even certain of what is going on. They don't know how these children survive. That kind of evidence can be leveraged by the local government, can be used by other NGOs, can be used by other stakeholders to boost the understanding of the street children problem, and also garner solutions of how best we're going to solve the problem, because it is a problem that is here, it has been here, but we need evidence to solve this problem. And that is what we're going to do in the long term.
Great. Thank you very much. I think time is up. So I think thank you very much to Jovia Nakato for this presentation, and good luck with the final decision. I'd like to move now to the second presentation by Cyrine Saab, who is going to talk about waste picking. With the project title Supporting Self-Reliance for Refugees, the Case of Waste Picking in Beirut. Cyrine, you have 50 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Cyrine, and I will be talking to you about waste pickers in Beirut, which is the capital city of Lebanon. Did you know that there are hundreds of thousands of refugee children like those in the picture to the right who work as waste pickers in Beirut? And although this provides them with the means to make a living, yet it exposes them to risks of exploitation and attacks on various fronts. To this end, and based on my research experience working alongside these communities for the past few years, I am proposing this research study which advocates for improving the work conditions of waste pickers. I will be particularly looking at how economic inclusion and relevant education can help make the work of waste pickers safer and their pockets fuller. Back in summer 2022, when I was conducting my doctoral study with street children in Beirut, I met a 12-year-old refugee child whom I will refer to as Ram. And as you can see in the picture to the right, Ram works as a waste picker. Ram, alongside tens of other children whom I have met in Beirut, have inspired this project. So let's take a moment to journey into his daily reality. Imagine with me being a 12-year-old refugee child. Every day you wake up uncertain about your future because you and your family lack the right to residency, to work, and the access to the very basic social services. Education remains like a distant dream for you because of the limited capacity in the schools in the host society. And even when it's available, the quality of the refugee education remains to be futureless and irrelevant to your life conditions and to your work prospects in the future. And in order to support your family in forging livelihood, you take to the streets under the scorching sun and you collect scrap material. But you know that at any moment, you might be detained by local authorities for engaging in what they perceive as an illegal activity. You are constantly wary of your surrounding, not only because you are afraid from the police, but also because you are afraid to be attacked by gangsters, especially if you were mistakenly working in an area which they would control. And in that case, you might be either evicted from their area or even forced to work under their operations. You also face assaults by the public because many of them see you as nothing more an eyesore who is tarnishing the image of their city. And finally, if you manage to sell your hardly earned and collected scrap material to scrap traders, they would buy it from you for a fraction of its worth, only to turn around and resell it to foreign recycling companies and make substantial profit. Now, Ram's experience epitomizes those of many other refugee children in Beirut, whose contribution to both the economy and to the environment often go unnoticed. So let's see how through this project we can advocate for improving their work conditions. I will start first by providing a little bit of context. The Syrian refugee crisis in 2011 has led Lebanon to become the state with the highest refugee per capita in the world. It is estimated today that over 40% of the residents in Lebanon are from the refugee populations. Despite that, Lebanon is not signatory of the 1951 Refugee Convention nor the 1967 Protocol, and therefore it lacks the legal instruments to offer protection for refugees. In 2015, the garbage crisis has also developed when the state's centralized waste management system failed to sustain payments for private firms who are responsible for cleaning streets and for addressing the garbage. And to this end, the state has failed to address roughly half of the waste that is produced in Lebanon, which obviously has created health and environmental repercussions. On top of all that, the economic crisis in 2019 has pushed over 90% of the refugees to live below the extreme poverty line that is defined by the World Bank. The Lebanese currency has also lost 6,000% of its value, which led to the soaring prices of scrap material as traded commodities that are affected by the international market and hence by the hyperinflation in Lebanon. Now, all of these conditions have created the perfect environment for a black market in the garbage industry to emerge. With the absence of a formal waste management system, mafias generally, who are backed up by political and by powerful elites, would exploit the absence of a formal waste management system and would control the business themselves, and they would be acquiring scrap from different sources. One of the sources would be the refugee children. At the same time, the refugees who are experiencing dire economic conditions would find this sector to be lucrative because it gives them the means to make ends meet. And so hundreds of thousands of refugees would participate in this sector, and it is mainly boys and young men due to the prevailing gender roles in their communities. And they would be acting as scrap suppliers, where they would be collecting scrap from the streets, from garbage, and from landfills to sell them to scrap traders. But we know from Ram's experience that this exposes them to exploitation and risks, and so it is important to address this issue. Now, let me delve into the heart of the research study that I'm proposing, which I would refer to as the Waste-Wise Way. The Waste-Wise Way seeks to advocate for improving the work conditions of waste pickers. It asks how can economically inclusive urban policies reduce the risks associated with waste picking, and how can work-based education enhance the knowledgeability of the waste pickers and therefore support their income generation and reduce their exploitation. Now, of course, this discussion is not entirely new. There has been several initiatives here and there in different contexts. In terms of including refugees in the informal recycling sector, the Turkish government, for example, has implemented the Zero Waste Project. Other more localized community-based initiatives would include UNHCR's From Waste to Value project in Algeria, the UNHCR's Recycling Beirut in Lebanon, the Waste Recycling Project by ICRC and the Kenyan Red Cross, and many more. Similarly, in terms of providing education for refugees that is alternative to the mainstream education, there has also been several initiatives, especially in Lebanon, such as the Funbus project by IRC and Makhzoumi, the Makani project by UNICEF, and the vocational education program by Kayani, just to name a few. However, these initiatives, although they are very important in the sense that they are inclusive and they aim to improve the work conditions of the refugees in different ways, but they remain to be top-down because they are mainly regulatory and designed based on the visions and the agendas of organizations and policymakers. And this is why they have demonstrated limited progress. And so in order to go the extra mile through this research study, I argue that it is very important to include the voices of the refugees, their stories, and their narratives in order to make sustainable impact. However, this does not mean isolating them from the voices of the stakeholders, but rather interweaving them together. And to do that, I am inspired by the trialectics framework of participation, which was introduced by Refsi and Bloom in 2016. In a nutshell, this framework provides a third way for doing things, whereby it highlights the transformative power of participation on multiple levels. And in the case of my study, this would involve conducting a two-stage data gathering process, which highlights both the refugee stories in light of the stakeholder accounts and interests. So first, I will need to amplify the voices of the waste pickers. And to do that, I will be drawing on my previous connections with the waste picker communities which I have developed through my doctoral study, and I will invite 30 of them to participate in cultural mapping. In the picture to the right, you can see an example of cultural mapping, where refugees will be asked to map their embodied experiences in the city. Now, of course, I will be guided by their own narratives, but in general, we will be discussing topics related to how they mitigate risks in the city, how they navigate the place to grow their income, and how they might leverage, for example, interactions in the city, all related to improving their work conditions. And I believe that this creative method, which is very participatory, is important because it helps to amplify the voices of the waste pickers, whose stories will serve as the cornerstone for building a relevant and a sustainable response. Next, I will need to bring stakeholders on board. And to do that, I will take on a pragmatic approach whereby I will be highlighting the waste pickers' economic and environmental contributions. Overall, I will be targeting 10 stakeholders. I'm particularly interested by UNICEF's representatives, especially through their Makani initiative, which provides holistic education for refugees, the Kayani Foundation through their vocational education program, the Jusur NGO as a refugee-led organization, Makhzoumi and IRC for the services that they provide street children, the ILO through their comprehensive report on street children in 2017, as well as the SWIM initiative, which through their community-based recycling projects that they have been implementing in the past few years. I will also target the Ministry of Social Affairs and the Ministry of Education and Higher Education as policymakers, as well as local authorities and other relevant stakeholders through the snowballing approach. In general, we will be discussing existing policies related to waste pickers, the challenges for implementing these or sustaining them, as well as the possible solutions moving forward. And I believe that this approach is important because it will help to build a realistic and a sustainable response. So what will this study achieve, and how will it make a difference in the lives of the waste pickers? Firstly, in collaboration with the organizations and with the policymakers, this study will advocate for economically inclusive policies that will potentially help to legitimize the work of the waste pickers and to see them as contributors to the economy and to the environmental health. And such initiatives would aim to reduce the risks of being targeted or attacked by the law enforcement and by authorities. Secondly, and through the work-based education program, which is focused on waste picking, the study will advocate for improving the numerical skills for waste pickers, and this will help them to recognize the value of their collections and potentially to reduce the exploitation by scrap traders. The study will also advocate for providing waste pickers with interpersonal skills, and this is important because it will help them to negotiate their safe operations, especially in areas where there's an influence of gangsters. It might also help them to collaborate with scrap traders to access rudimentary tools, such as a trolley, to reduce their physical labor when picking waste. And on the public level, the study will seek to launch a social media campaign in order to highlight the experiences of waste pickers and raise awareness about their economic and environmental contributions. This will help to increase empathy, to reduce stigma, and also to reduce incidents of public assaults. And lastly, the study will aim to produce evidence-based research to inform service-driven policies, particularly in relation to waste picking among Lebanon's refugee communities. The study will also have the potential for impact to make impact on the society at large. Firstly, in advocating for the integration of economically inclusive policies for refugees, the study will address the economic vulnerabilities, and therefore it will contribute to enhancing human security among refugee populations in Lebanon, especially in the absence of the legal instruments to do that. Relatedly, by providing refugees with work-based education, the study will not only support their income generation, but also their skill development and potentially their economic independence. And this brings me to my final point, where the study will advocate for self-reliance for refugees by creating opportunities for development within their own communities. And this bottom-up approach will seek to address a gap in policies on self-reliance, which have gained traction in the Global Compact for Refugees in the past few years, but nevertheless remain to be widely criticized in the literature for being universal and based on neoliberal and growth models. And so critical structural changes to policies that are based on the lived experiences of the waste pickers are important in order to ensure sustained improvements for the communities. And this lies at the heart of the Waste-Wise Way project, which aims to inform such improvements not only in Lebanon, but to potentially scale up to other states with similar developmental contexts. And to conclude, I invite you to imagine with me the possibilities of what would come up when we improve the work conditions of waste pickers. Let us journey back to Ram, who has now turned 14 years old. Ram has made remarkable progress in improving his work conditions. He has learned how to know the value of his collected items using the plastic as a measuring unit. He has also developed negotiation skills, which helped him to secure safe spaces for his operations. And he has also built convivial relationships with local shops, and these offer him protection whenever needed. Ram has also learned to build a collaborative relationship with a scrap trader who offered him the metal cart, which you can see in the picture to the right. And this metal cart has significantly reduced his physical labor and expanded his operational reach. Ram's experience underscores the potential for improvement, but this progress, of course, is not enough and did not come easily. It actually took Ram 2 years of being exposed to exploitation and attacks to get there. Moreover, other children who are working in different places or who have different circumstances might not have had the chance to make such improvements. And therefore, relying on chance alone is not enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cyrine. I think we can invite the jury members to switch on the videos and to start asking questions. And of course, I invite people joining us remotely to use the Q&A session. And if there's time, I might abuse my position as a moderator to also ask a question, which is actually relevant also for the previous presentation. But I'll give the floor to the jury first. Who'd like to start?
I think I cannot show my face. Yeah, maybe video is I think. Oh.
Yeah, we can hear you though.
Yeah, but I cannot show my. Okay, yeah.
Oh, okay, there. Okay. So Selim, you had a question or Selim, you raised your hand. Why don't you go first?
Yeah, I thought that Professor Izumi is going to ask the question first.
No.
I think she was just trying to figure out the video.
Okay, right. No, thank you. Selim, I think it was a very interesting presentation and a very interesting topic indeed and very relevant. I'm just curious to know one thing is that you mentioned that Lebanon is not a signatory of the Refugee Convention. And now working with the refugees is a big challenge. You know, in a country like Bangladesh even, where I'm from, we are dealing with a huge refugee from Myanmar. Actually, Bangladesh is not a signatory of the convention. So they call it forcefully displaced population. It's not refugee state. So my question to you is that when there is no official recognition of the refugee, and then we want to work with the refugee and to make them a kind of in a more systematic way, improve their livelihood, and your project also talks about it. How do you then, without this kind of official acknowledgement and recognition, how do you then, go ahead with this? So this is my question.
Shall I respond now?
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah. So thank you for the question. This is very important, especially now because the number of the refugees is increasing in Lebanon, and there's a huge media campaign for voluntary repatriation. However, I think the main component in my research, which will help me to kind of navigate this issue, is turning back to local policies and working with local authorities, with grassroots organizations. And there's a huge body of literature on that sometimes, although this might not work in tandem with the national policies, but there are always initiatives that can happen on the local level and in collaboration sometimes with organizations that are interested in order to put forward this. And I think this is why I have tried to include as many stakeholders as possible who have different interests, but in a way are relevant to this project. So I'm trying to include policymakers. Of course, as you say, this might conflict with the national policies, but at the same time, there are lots of grassroots organizations. Sometimes I might include police and also the people who are concerned with the environmental issues in order to put forward a sustainable initiative. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Ono-san, please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah. I had a similar question I had with Cyrine because I also visited Bangladesh. And then because I think when you talk about economic inclusiveness, it's a really big challenge if those refugee people are not recognized and accepted and then given the right to work and also have education in a localized society. So I had a similar question as a Selim. How can you evaluate the effectiveness of education-related work that to the contribution of the economic inclusiveness? That was my first question. The other question was your methodologies. You wrote that you will adapt the kind of informal kind of conversation, walking, traveling, I mean, the epistemological approach. I think you really try to listen to those people and try to get the realities. So, but I would like to know more about this methodology, exactly what you are going to do. And also you say that you will ask those information gathering through research assistants. But maybe this is really kind of challenging work. You have to really understand that the people, how to talk to them. So result may be a bit arbitrary unless you do a really good training for those research assistants. So I would like to know more about the methodology and also how you will make sure those that the method can be really I mean you can get that important information through those methodologies. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I will start with the economic inclusion. As I said in the presentation, what I am trying to do is I am trying to highlight the contributions of the waste pickers on both the economy and the environment in order to attract the stakeholders to engage with me in the research. And there has been some similar initiatives in Turkey. So Turkey also has a similar issue with a high number of refugees, and they also have similar problems with their legal statuses. But the Turkish government has implemented a policy, which is the Zero Waste Project, whereby the waste pickers would be legitimized in a way where, for example, they would be given T-shirts that show that they are engaged in waste picking. They will be assigned to work in a certain area. They will be given access to basic social services because they are regarded as people who are participating in the economy. And I was inspired by this project. Now I know that this is regulatory and very top-down, which is what I aim to move away from. But I think this is a very good starting point to see that there are possible solutions that can be done on the ground if we take a very pragmatic approach in order to include the refugees. And in terms of their education, there are already lots and lots of education programs for refugees, and there is lots of funding for education program for refugees. But the problem is that even when they try to make them work-based, they are not relevant to their everyday lives because they are still disconnected. They are still based on colonial agendas. They are designed by the West. They are adopted from different organizations. But there are very little initiatives that are really sensitive to the everyday lives of the refugees. And organizations will not be able to implement such relevant programs if there isn't research that will help to inform these policies. And this is what I aim to do. And this is all based on my doctoral study because I have spent so much time working alongside with these children. And some of them already go to the school, by the way, and some go to NGO. And even those who go to the local, to the grassroots NGO, they were still not able to maintain, to pursue their education because at some point it was futureless. It did not take them anywhere because it is not relevant to their life. It does not provide them with the prospects to work, neither in the host society, nor back home, nor in the West if they were aiming for onward migration. And so I think I addressed your first question on policies. Now the second, which is on methodology. I am inspired by Kivali's work on informal conversations because this will help to elicit realistic and embodied conversations, embodied experiences with the street children. So this will be kind of the umbrella of my methodology. But in terms of the method, I will be using the cultural mapping, as I said, because it will help the children to talk about their experiences in the city. And I will be drawing a lot on the connections that I have made during my doctoral study. So I know lots of these children, I know their families, I know their communities, and I have talked already to some of them to participate in the study. And I think I am kind of in that way. I am kind of familiar with the with the setting. In terms of recruiting research assistants, I already know 2 community researchers whom I have hired to help me with my doctoral studies, because doing research with street children was a bit dangerous. And this is why I know people who are already familiar with my approach with the study and with the research. And I also mentioned in my proposal that I will dedicate time to train these people on how to talk to the children, how to conduct cultural mapping. And of course, I will be with them for the first couple of visits to ensure that the methodology is rigorously conducted. I hope I answered your question. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Very much, Rui.
Yeah, full disclosure, I grew up in Rausche in West Beirut from 78 to 82. So this strikes a chord. Binet Qandour, next to Al-Hillab. So I just had an admin question. So one thing I noticed in your budget is that you had a fairly large amount in the budget which was devoted to admin and finance. Compared to what I see in a lot of other projects, and so I just wanted to know if you could just tell us a little bit more about why the big chunk, particularly large there.
So actually, I'm affiliated to the Center for Lebanese Studies, and I have sought their advice to help me draft the budget. I mean, based on like the previous the methods and the policies that they have, this is what we have come up with. But of course, I'm happy to revise this if you think like it's out of the ordinary approach to budgeting. I'm happy to revise it.
I'm not attacking you on that. I mean, I'm an economist. I'm an academic, but right now I'm sort of obsessed with admin things. So I'm nitpicking. But no,
it's just like the admin and the finance team, I think, will help me with with drafting the contracts, of course, with providing equipment such as recorders, such as the stationery needed, as well as the office to conduct the meeting with the stakeholders. The media officer will also help me to conduct the workshops with the stakeholders and with the waste pickers. And I think this is why a lot of the budget goes there. But yeah, I'm not like an expert in that. So I'm happy, as I said, to look. And it's very nice to know that you are familiar with Rausche and you grew up there.
Barakallah.
Yeah, we can definitely help with that. Dr. Mina, please. Sorry, you're muted.
Okay, you will conduct research in the informal recycling sector. Its environment must be quite challenging. So for example, what about the attitude of the employers? So do you expect some resistance from them? So could you tell us about it?
This is actually a very important question because I have experienced it firsthand during my doctoral study. So a lot of these children work on their own, and such as Ram, whom I have been referring to in my presentation. And but I know that there are other children who work under an employer. Now, this employer can be their parents sometimes, and it can be a scrap trader. And I am aware that this might pose kind of like they might not be happy with my presence. And this is why I learned in my study how to keep my distance from the children, how to know when to approach them and when not. And I am aware that this also creates a limitation for my study because I will not be able to freely approach the children who work with employers. It is so much easier to work with communities of children who are working on their own and who I know their families. So that's one thing I'm going to do is to maintain my distance and to limit my participants pool. And the second thing I aim to do is to approach the children during, for example, their lunch break, because I know that they all take lunch break, they gather together to have lunch together and whatnot. And so this way I will aim to not interrupt their work. And whenever possible, of course, I will have to take consent from the people who are surrounding them to ensure safety and to ensure that there isn't any pressure for them to participate. I will also be providing meals and compensation for their time, especially if they agree to participate in the workshop, and just to make sure that I am not compromising their work conditions. And of course, they always have the right to withdraw from the study. They always have the right to terminate the conversation and then get back to it at a later stage. Yeah. These are some of the things I can think of.
Thank you very much. There are no questions from the audience, but so let me ask just one question, just because this is a public, in fact, public session. So I think we also ought to take kind of a layman's approach to the project. And I think one question we ought to ask is, what is the overall goal here? And I think there's a question I could have asked also to the previous presenter. Is it to keep these people, in a way speaking, working at better conditions, or to get rid of the sector and basically give them other opportunities, right? Because we're still talking about basically children, right? Legally, even though of course life makes them grow much quicker. So what would you say to somebody asking this? Are we just trying to improve the working conditions but without changing the structural kind of problem, or are we trying to change the structural problem here?
This again is an extremely important question, and I've thought a lot about it before. I think the waste sector in Lebanon is very corrupted, and it has been as such for so many years, as many other sectors. And maybe at this stage in this research, it's very difficult to challenge the status quo, especially with the limited timing and the limited resources for conducting this study or even my doctoral study. But I think overall, in a way, I might be touching upon this issue when I launch the media campaign, when I raise awareness more about this issue. But I am also aware that people are already taking to the streets to protest against these practices by the government when it comes to the waste sector. So I am aware that we are at a very difficult stage of changing what is going on. And in terms of the refugee crisis, it has been going for over a decade now. At first, we thought that this is just going to be a temporary thing, but it ended up to be really protracted, as the case of refugees in so many other countries. And I think it might be a little bit too ambitious to think that these people are going to change their directions in the near future. Many of them seem to be really stuck in their lives, and this is why there's a huge wave of people participating in the waste sector. So this might not change over a course of a couple of years. It might take longer. And especially that many of the children whom I have met not only work as waste pickers in Lebanon, but they have siblings and cousins, for example, and relatives who work in the waste sector in other countries. So it's becoming like a transnational phenomenon. And I think it's worth highlighting and improving its conditions, since it's already there, and it seems to be staying there for quite a long time.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. Time is up, so I'm afraid we need to move to the next presentation. But thanks a lot for all your answers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cyrine. Okay, so let's move to the third presentation of today by Victor Owusu, who is going to take us to Ghana and the Philippines to look at coastal fisheries with the project Climate Change Education, Awareness and Communication Among Coastal Fisher Folks in Ghana and the Philippines. Victor, I'd like to invite you to switch on your camera, open your mic, and give us presentation about your project. You have 15 minutes. I don't see Victor. Victor, are you there? Oh, here you are.
Hello,
the camera was
hello,
just
can you
warming
hear
up.
me?
Yes, now we can hear you. I'm sure the camera is just warming up. Can I invite the jury members to switch off their videos so we can give the floor to Victor? Victor, can you hear me?
So let me share my screen. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear us? Can you hear me? Victor, we can hear you, but I don't know if you can hear us. I don't not see your video. I wonder if João, do you know if Victor is, can you see Victor connected? I think
I
he lost the connection. I think he lost the connection. Is gonna reconnect.
If needed be, I have the presentation with the audio recording.
Yeah, let's see. Hopefully he can just reconnect. Let's give him like a minute to see if he manages to reconnect. It'll be a pity to miss his presentation. Yes, Victor, he's back. We can see you now. Yes. We cannot hear you though.
Hello.
Yes,
Can you
perfect.
see my screen?
All good. All good. I can see you, but I cannot see your screen.
I'm sorry, the connection all of a sudden went very bad. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, great.
Please share your screen. You look like you're picking. Perfect. Perfect. We can see your screen now. So please start in the slide mode, slide deck mode. Yeah, 15 minutes. Thank you, Victor.
Hello, everyone. My name is Victor Owusu. I'm presenting on climate change education, awareness and communication among coastal.
Victor, we cannot, I think it was a problem with your connection. Victor, can you hear me? So I suggest we maybe, João, we shift to the pre-recorded presentation because we prepared for this in this scenario. I think Victor cannot hear us. We might have to stop his screen share. Okay, João, I suggest we just play the presentation he recorded in case things went wrong, which happens to be the case. So if you can share the presentation, great, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Victor Owusu, and I am presenting on climate change education, awareness and communication among coastal fisher folk in Ghana and the Philippines. So imagine these fishing families spending money to buy fuel, food, and other productive fishing inputs to embark on fishing only to return with little catch or no catch at all. Or in most instances, their boats and nets, including fish processing sites, being flooded because of the emergencies of climate change. Initial research shows that quality climate change education and communication can help people to overcome feelings of grief, fear, anxiety, and denial, which in most instances can lead to climate change inaction. So through the activities of our research, we seek to enhance the knowledge of fisher folk with respect to climate change, so that they will be better positioned to mitigate and adapt and deploy adaptation strategies against climate change. Of course, climate change poses a major threat to not only livelihoods, but also it has the potential to push many more people into poverty. And in the case of our rural coastal spaces in developing countries, where most people depend on fish as their major source of livelihood, the situation becomes even more critical. So it is already, the impact of climate change is already manifesting, and it has negative consequences for human security through widening inequality, loss of livelihood, increasing poverty, emergence of diseases, conflict, migration, and extinction of other natural species. Our research is situated within the context of SDG 13 and 14, climate change action, life below water. So we seek to mobilize more knowledge about climate change so that fisher folk will be better equipped to adapt and protect their livelihoods from the impact of climate change. Of course, in both Ghana and Philippines, a lot of people depend on marine fisheries resources for their daily source of income and their livelihoods. So for instance, in Ghana, we are talking about over 3 million people who directly and indirectly depends on the fisheries for their source of livelihood. We have over 60% of Ghanaians also who rely on fish as their major protein intake. In the Philippines, over 50% also rely on fish as their main source of protein. The fishery sector supports the livelihoods of over 2 million people. So, West Africa Southeast Asia comparison. I had the opportunity to do my doctoral studies in South Korea, where through the research activities of my PhD supervisor, I got to meet and interact with a lot of scholars and researchers from Thailand, Philippines, and Vietnam. And particularly my PhD supervisor also has a lot of links and research activities ongoing in the Philippines. And so through this network, I also extended my research network to include colleagues in the Philippines, which we've already established a research advisory group between colleagues here in Ghana and those in the Philippines for successful project activities and also implementation of our findings. But for both Ghana and Philippines, it is nothing new in terms of research collaboration, especially with respect to coastal governance, marine resource management, and other related issues. A lot of fisheries experts have been sent from Ghana to Philippines to study certain policies related to marine conservation, implementation of closed season, marine protected areas, etc. So through the generous funds provided by the GDN, we seek to deepen this collaboration between Ghana and the Philippines, especially the protection of coastal livelihoods against climate change impacts. So our study is situated within the broader literature on climate change education and adaptation. In recent years, there has been a lot of attention given to climate change and its impact on agricultural systems, including fisheries. But there is still limited attention being paid to especially how fisher folk in these rural coastal communities educate and sensitize themselves about the impact of climate change. But of course, quality climate change communication and education could be a very valuable tool to mobilize local people in adapting to climate change impacts, and more especially how people generate and use climate change information for planning to protect livelihoods is critical for adaptation outcomes. It could be positive, it could be negative, depending on the quality knowledge of events. For instance, talking about climate change and how it influences their adaptation and mitigation strategies. Adequate knowledge of climate change will also help fisherfolk to be able to overcome feelings of fear and anxiety, which in most cases could lead to climate inaction, exposing and exacerbating their situation and their livelihood. So it is very important to understand the perception, knowledge, adaptation, and mitigation practices of coastal fisherfolk in relation to climate change and its impact. In doing so, we want to look at how fisherfolk in Ghana and Philippines learn and share knowledge about climate change impacts. We also want to know the current adaptation and mitigation strategies of fisherfolk in Ghana and Philippines to the impact of climate change. So when we talk about adaptation, we are looking at the structural changes to both human and natural related induced activities. And then the mitigation, we are looking at specific activities that they do to reduce, for instance, the emission of greenhouse gases. And then finally, we also want to look at how effective would fishing model school be for improving climate change education among fisherfolk in Ghana and Philippines. So in Ghana, the study will be conducted between Ghana and the Philippines. In Ghana, we focus in the Western region. In the Philippines, we also focus on the Sorsogon province. In terms of methodology, we will deploy a mixed method approach, a combination of both quantitative and qualitative data collection and analysis. Our main target population will be the coastal fishing communities, and so coastal community leaders, the municipal and district fisheries officers, the meteorological agencies, and also non-governmental organizations. Our sample strategies include simple, random, but we will ensure that it is representative, and then purposive for the qualitative data that will be collected, as well as snowball sampling strategies. Our data collection instruments will include questionnaire survey among the fisherfolk. We will deploy interview guide, focus group discussions. We also deploy drones for coastal landscape analysis, and then we will also start the fishing model school. So I briefly want to talk about the fishing model school. The fishing model school aims to provide comprehensive training in fishery science, focusing on the impacts of climate change and database mitigation approaches for conservation and sustainability. As the fisheries industry faces challenges related to changing climate, a fishing model school can help address them by providing education and training that will promote responsible fishing and stewardship practices. In terms of analysis, a combination of regression, thematic analysis, and also look at the drone, images taken from the drone to be discussed further in the focus group, and also later in the model school to appreciate the issues of the changing climate very well. In terms of project innovation, we are looking at it from our methodology, our methods that will be deployed. Of course, the use of drones in social sciences research is nothing new, but in this case, within the coastal spaces, we believe it will be very good for longitudinal analysis and trying to answer the question like how have coastal landscape changed over the years. Look at erosion and other related issues. And also the fishing model school will form the long-term sustainability of the project, where we seek to mobilize knowledge from fisherfolk, coastal communities, and other concerned stakeholders to strengthen the adaptive capacity of rural coastal communities. Our expected outcomes, series of reports will be written to the funders and other concerned stakeholders. We will also regularly release policy briefs, engage the media through Facebook, Twitter, and also traditional radio, for stakeholder engagement, academic publications, and we also expect at the end of the research, the fieldwork, to 40 fisher folk, both Ghana and Philippines, to successfully completed the fishing model school. Our impact, we anticipate to equip fisher folk with climate change knowledge and weather forecasting applications through the fishing model school. We also hope to expand the network of the coastal fishing community to have access to other stakeholders who will continuously engage them to find solutions to climate change impact. And through the fishing model school, we hope to deepen fisher folk knowledge on fisheries laws as well as sustainable fisheries practices. And also, most importantly, to revitalize and boost local development through the fishing model school. We will train fisher folk on sustainable small-scale aquaculture practices, as well as training on other climate change related adaptation strategies. Thank you.
Well, Victor, sorry, the connection was not. Hopefully your connection will work now, so we can ask questions. Can you try to speak?
My apologies. There was power outage, so I lost it.
No problem.
My apologies.
That's why we prepared the backup plan. Sorry, you had to sit through your own presentation. It's unusual. Maybe you'll be even more ready to answer the question of the jury, being yourself in the position of the jury. So I'd like to open the floor for questions from jury members, and of course, again, from anyone who's connected. So please use the Q&A if you are connected and you have questions for Victor. Who'd like to start? Dr. Mina, please.
Okay. Thank you. Your research framework is potentially very interesting as just comparing Ghana and the Philippines. So it's my suggestion, not question, but suggestion. Why don't you try the villagers, fishers in two countries online and using Zoom or something to learn from each other's experience? This might be quite interesting potentially. Maybe you may have some internet connection problems, but why don't you think about this kind of more participatory mutual learning? They talk about their own environments and also the fishing, methods, and it's quite, can be inspiring. Why don't you think?
Thank you, sir. I think it will be a great opportunity to connect directly with the fisher folk in Philippines, and then it will also provide that kind of direct knowledge sharing opportunities that we are planning to achieve. So definitely we will do incorporate it into our planning and as part of our data collection methodologies. Thank you so much.
Okay, Ono-san.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is a very fascinating research and also really perspective, and I really enjoyed a lot in listening to you. It seems to me this climate fishing model school is a very important, the component of your research. Exactly. So, is there already some example, or you have already tried in this kind of model before, or this is the first time you are going to pilot? This is my first question. The other question related to that, you have mixed methodology, both qualitative and quantitative, and you do a lot of kind of interview and data survey, and then based on that kind of analysis, you will create a content of this fishing model school. How all this related to the design of fishing model school? If that is the case, but the there may be time constraint because you have to test that the fishing school model and you have to evaluate. So are you sure about all those things will come together? Yeah, this is my question. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the important questions. I think with the climate fishing model school, we've not tested it before. It's the first time in Ghana, I think most of the field school has been focused on the farmers, the traditional farmers. So we thought we thought it through, and we wanted to export this idea to the coastal fisher folk, especially they are also directly facing climate change, its related impact. So we wanted to bring this model school idea to the fisher folk to harness their knowledge and also share the knowledge we have, so that we'll build their capacity to be able to withstand the climate change and its related impact. And then, as you rightly said, the findings from our questionnaire survey, the interviews, and the focus group discussion, including the drone imagery analysis, will inform the curriculum or the content of the fishing school. However, we will also review literatures concerning how similar model schools has been done, especially in the Philippines. They have a farming model school and some aspect of fisheries, but not really integrated. So based on the data and the literature available to us, we also incorporate part of some of the topics that we think will best fit into our context. So it should be a combination of both results from our findings and also review from the literature to make it a very comprehensive curriculum. And then about the timing, since this is a pilot school, we maybe maximum about 2 to 3 weeks, because it's an experimental thing. So at the end of the project or at the end of the school, our feedback, if we get positive feedback, then we could capitalize on it to write more proposals, to get more grants, so that we can extend the duration of the school maybe to 6 months and replicate it in other coastal areas across Ghana, Africa, and also in Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Selim.
Thank you, Victor. It was very interesting presentation, and I enjoyed it quite a lot. I have just a couple of questions. One is that if you could elaborate a little bit more behind the rationale behind selecting Ghana and then and Philippines. Why you are comparing these two countries? Is there any kind of very specific rationale, or just because you had contacts or you had worked together in the past? So I think I want to listen to more kind of fundamental rationale behind it, the kind of justification. And second one is that I think that also been asked by Professor Yumi. You are actually trying to apply multiple techniques. Can you tell us a little bit more about the kind of how you are going to integrate or these multiple techniques into to tell a kind of comprehensive or a kind of coordinated story? One concern I have, your use of the drone. I think this is fascinating, definitely. But when you mention the use of drone, you put it in the bracket that you want to see the changes over time. And we know that the climatic change, it takes time to see the changes. So, and your project duration, and then what the kind of longer time period you need. So how do you like to kind of address these issues? Thank you, Victor.
Thank you very much for the question, sir. So as we are aware, climate change is a global phenomenon, but its impacts are locally differentiated, or its impact affect at the local level. So being a global phenomenon, coastal fisher folk in Ghana may have their own perception and knowledge. Those in the Philippines too may have their own perception and knowledge about it. And then also, most importantly, in terms of designing adaptation and mitigation strategies, it will be interesting to learn from what is happening in Philippines and how best we can also incorporate it into the design of our local adaptation and mitigation strategies. And then beyond that, in the marine fisheries, both Ghana and Philippines are traditional fisheries countries where a lot of people living in the coastal communities depend on fish and its related activities for their daily source of livelihood. So there is that kind of interconnection between the two countries in terms of the dependency on marine fisheries resources. And also in terms of best practices, knowledge sharing and adaptation mitigation strategies. Like I mentioned before, there have been some series of exchange between Ghana and Philippines, experts from Ghana go to Philippines to understudy like conservation management, reefs, the use of coral reefs, artificial coral reefs to help restore fisheries, which currently we are not doing in Ghana, or how the implementation of closed season and marine protected areas. Vis-a-vis, Philippines have also been here some time ago to understudy how our traditional systems of management of the fisheries is helping to fight against illegal fisheries and etc. So I think within the context of both being a major coastal fishing countries and at the same time talking about climate change, it's a global phenomenon, but its impact and adaptation are quite different. It will also present a good learning opportunity to understand what is being done elsewhere in the Philippines and in Ghana, so that we can have some synergy and build the resilience of most of these coastal fishing communities. And also about the drones, it's a very good observation. So the images will be taken maybe within a week or two, but there are already existing images, topographic digital maps, and also satellite images that have been taken in Ghana and both the Philippines over the past decades. So we'll compare our images with these images that have been taken previously to look at the changes that are occurring and how best we can plan for similar changes in the near future. And also the deployment of the MACE method, the rationale is not to only have a component focusing on only the quantitative aspect, but also to try and get the emotions, the feelings, and the understanding of the fisher folk through the interviews, and then also later through the focus group discussion, where we'll make a unique arrangement for representation from both the men and the women, so that we can hear more into the issues that affect their livelihoods. And also during the focus group interaction, we plan to, the images that were taken from the drones, we plan to discuss it, show it to them, and together for us to discuss and see how best we can plan towards the imminent future impacts of climate-related change. So though there may be many, but there's a plan to have this coherent source of findings that will best situated to inform our policy and contribute to the literature, etc. Thank you, sir.
And
Thank you.
Thank you both. There's of course Jean-Louis raising his hand, and we have also have two questions from the audience. Let me just read the two questions, and then we go to Jean-Louis, and I'll ask you, Victor, to respond to all three as a concluding answer. So the two questions are really about what somebody's wondering whether what you plan to do is interesting also for other sectors beyond fisheries. Right. So, like, what will you plan to do? Can you show the way for other sector? And then there's a question about what you expect from the comparison between the two countries. So, you know, what comparing these two countries will, not only why you chose these two countries, but what comparing these two countries should you expect will give you. Jean-Louis, the floor is yours.
Yeah, just a quick question. Thank you for that presentation, which was very interesting. So I just wanted to know if you could just quickly give us an example of how you're going to, because in your proposal, you developed very nicely the quant data to data gathering exercise. Could you give us an example of how you're going to take the data from the questionnaires, an example of the analysis that you're going to do, is it a regression, whatever, and then how that's going to feed directly into the Fisher School? Just sort of a very short, concrete example.
Thank you very much, sir. So we will begin the field work or the data collection with the surveys, the household surveys. So through the surveys, we'll be having both open-ended and closed-ended questions, but mainly closed-ended questions and some few open-ended questions to inform how we are going to structure our interview guide. So after we are done with the household surveys, we will do some preliminary analysis of some of the key issues that came up, and then it will inform us in the design of our interview guide, so that we'll be able to narrow down and zoom into some of the salient issues that came out from the quantitative survey, so that we can get deep insight into those issues. And then later we'll follow it up with the focus group discussion, where in this case, it will be, as we are aware, in the form of informal or organized group session. Normally, people feel a bit uncomfortable when they are speaking alone. So the focus group will bring both men and women, young people, quite representative. So that in the form of informal group setting, discussion will be able to also subject some of the findings from the qualitative interviews into further scrutiny, and we believe we'll be able to arrive also at more data to inform the planning of the field school, etc. But in terms of the specific techniques that we'll be using for the analysis, with the household survey, of course, we will use the Kobo toolbox. It's an online, it's a digital form of administering a survey. So the questions will be coded on a tablet. So whilst we are there, we'll be entering the responses, and then we'll transport it into SPSS and also SL template. So the descriptive analysis will be basically using SL and then the SPSS package. And then later, after we do the qualitative interviews and the focus group discussions, and then maybe we may try to triangulate the results, maybe from the SL from the interviews, and also gain more insight by doing simple linear regression analysis to see how some of the teams will be connecting to each other, etc. So I think these are some of the plans that we have outlined for our fieldwork exercise.
Okay, I think time is up. So thank you, Victor, for all these answers, and thank you, of course, to all our jury members. Now the jury will actually meet in a closed door session to deliberate on the results of the Global Development Awards competition for 2023 for the ORD category, and the results will be announced on May 1st at an event in partnership with INGSA and 2024 conference of INGSA and the International Network for Government Science Advice in Kigali. So thanks as well to everyone who connected to the session remotely to follow us. Please follow the updates on our social media channels and on our website. And yeah, good luck to all 3 finalists. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we can leave now, right?
Yes, now the session is officially closed.
Sure.
Thank you.